class, so it feels a little bit brand new to me today, but I'm glad to be back. First on the agenda, we're just going to go over the minutes. So if the commission members could look over the agenda, if there are any questions, any revisions needed, let's go over that now. I did have a few questions, but that, I guess, Nia, you would be the person we can address that to, or should I just hold off on it pertaining to the minutes? It's not a revision, it's just, I guess, needed information for me. I noticed that in the business and inclusion program update, I was just curious as to what policies, what new policies are going to be implemented and within what framework. I just don't know if I actually read that. I know Cortina was mentioned in that piece, but Rosanna is implementing some new policies, and I was just wondering what that would look like. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Brad Brand, I'm Asheville City Attorney. Just to speak on the progress of the race and gender conscious contracting program. So that's something that has been an initiative for the city that started out with having the disparity study that was done last year. And right now the city is continuing to work towards moving in a direction to increase the first of all, the outreach efforts that we require on our contracts. We have some sort of pilot programs going on, and now we're looking to expand those out to a broader set of all the contracts across the city, with the ultimate goal under consideration of going to a full-scale race and gender conscious program for contracting, which is not something very many people do, but we're exploring those options as that being the goal that we would have in the near future. We want to work on that before the disparity study becomes too old and we would have to do it again. So that there's an effort on the city from multiple departments trying to put that together as we speak.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions pertaining to that? No? Thanks, Brad.
And as I know folks have wanted updates regarding the disparity study, Rosanna is putting together a yearly report, and she will come in January to give y'all an update on what she's been working on and like what essentially like what like data is showing and things like that.
Oh, you can stay.
Okay, great.
I also noticed, and I really appreciated the Office of Equity update, and I just wanted to touch base on the racial healing piece. So would that look like, just as Human Relations Commission members, we request to go to REI training?
No, so thank you for bringing that up. So the Office of Equity and Inclusion did racial healing grants, and so I shared it with y'all to pass out and to apply if you were interested. And so we received 34 grants of folks who have ongoing racial healing projects in Asheville, and so that was really exciting to see. We put together a review board, and they helped us narrow down to about, I think, 16, and then the Office of Equity and Inclusion went in and looked. So Yashika Smith is the contact for that, and we are narrowing down our 8 recipients. So yes, that is ongoing.
Aren't they supposed to be announced tomorrow, or is that going to be a longer process?
I'm not quite sure. Kimberly has been out of town for a conference. I'll double check with Yashika. I can actually text her right now, and then I can report back.
Okay, and I noticed that it was mentioned of identifying someone in the city manager's department who will be doing, I guess, just some recruitment on making sure that equity is spread about pertaining to the business inclusion program. And Peggy Rowe mentioned that she would be that person but I was just wondering if she came back to give you information.
I have not spoken with Peggy since. I can follow up with her on that. I've been in contact with Rosanna as the head of the business inclusion office, but yes.
Thank you.
I have a question. Who is in charge, the mini grants that you guys are giving out, there are 8 of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who is in charge of doing oversight of the deliverables on those grants once they're given out? In other words, I mean, you know what a deliverables.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, Yashika Smith in our office is over that. In terms of, are you speaking of like deliverables in terms of making sure they're continuing on with the work that they're doing, or like say a little bit more?
Right. When I come from the nonprofit realm, and when we get a grant, it's basically like a list of things that we need to achieve,
Yeah.
or at least have tried to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the reason, one of the reasons, but so the Ashika was, again, is the person behind these grants. We wanted to make sure that this was already ongoing work, just because we know that there would be, there could be issues with accountability if folks are trying to start something completely new. What I can do is, I could speak with, but like I said, Yashika is behind the creation of the grants, and so I've really just been there for technical assistance. I can contact Yashika and maybe reply to y'all via email or give y'all an update that way.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Nia.
In regards to this, in regards to the race and gender related to the contracting, are we talking about minority women?
No.
That?
If you go to a race and gender conscious program, you have to base it on the results of a disparity study showing where an actual disparity lies. And I can't remember exactly the categories that we found there was a disparity. So I'd have to tell you exactly, I'd have to take a look at the disparity study again and tell you what those are. But the goal would be to apply the obligation to meet those criteria for contracts in every case where a disparity was found. I can't recall exactly, unfortunately, what those were at this point.
The hid behind the fact they hid behind gender, and it was white women. And
As I recall, I don't think we actually found the disparity with gender. And I think that's one place where we found there was no disparity. I would have to check that survey to make sure, but I don't think there was
that's
one.
what concerns me, is that we'll continue to use hide behind gender, and the disparity and the focus and the emphasis may not need to be there, as opposed to ethnic minorities who have generally have been excluded, precluded, whatever you want to call it, from doing business with the city. And when you throw gender in there, that really muddies the waters for me.
Yeah.
And so if that disparity is not there in terms of gender, then we need to strike the gender language.
Yeah, I think that the survey went down. It's a really good point. The survey, I think, broke it down to a further level than just gender, to actually a race and gender. So you see, is this a minority female? Is this white female? So we can actually see where the real disparities are, and those would be the areas we
Because when you
address.
say race, that's going to include Black and Hispanic women.
Yeah, and I think those were checked as separate categories in this, so we could really see where disparity lies and not lump a larger group in together.
Thank you. Thank you, Micah. Okay, so can I have a motion to pass the minutes from September? Are there any revisions that's needed before we go ahead and take a vote?
Second.
Thank you. The September minutes have been approved. Okay, so we're going on into the updates and reports, and I'd like to open it up to the budget process overview presentation.
Good afternoon. Tony McDowell from the city's finance department. Also have Beth Beekle from the finance department with me as well. Forgive me, we've been doing several of these the last few days, and what I've found is about 3 to 5 minutes into it, my voice starts to go, and so if you see me hit the water, just know I've reached that point. So anyway, so what we're doing, and first of all, thanks for having us on your agenda. We've been out, or have been going out for the last few weeks and trying to talk to all the city's boards and commissions about our budget process and the city's budget. And really where this all started was last fall. So when council adopted the budget back in June of 2018, one of the things they told us was that they want us to do more outreach and do more community engagement and provide more transparency around the budget and the budget process. So last fall, we did a series of budget work sessions with City Council. There were 5 of them where each department came and presented their budget to City Council and basically did a deep dive into the city's budget. And like I said, there were 5 of those sessions between, I think it was August and December of last year. And in addition to that, we also went out into the community and did 4 presentations around the city in the east, north, west, south parts of town, and basically did like a Budget 101 presentation where folks could come out from the community, hear information about the budget, and give us feedback and all. And so what we thought this year was, what's the next logical step in terms of that kind of engagement? And so we decided coming to boards and commissions was a good idea. You all are a captive audience. You're here. You're engaged. You're concerned residents. And so we're here today. And so what this is, we have got a few slides I'm going to run through. It's kind of like a Budget 101 presentation, like I said, and we'll get started. So the agenda is we're going to talk a little bit about where the money comes from to fund our city services, how that money is used to provide services, and then kind of how we go about making decisions during the budget process. But before we get into that, we're actually going to have you all do something. We're going to spend a couple minutes. We have this exercise that we want you all to help us out with here. And what it is there's a list of funding requests. Yes, ma'am.
Are we allowed to capture your screen presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And this should be with your agenda materials. And if it's not, we can make sure it's emailed out to everyone. So what this is it's a list of funding proposals, and this is real life. This is some of the things that we got in from city departments in the last year or so as budget requests. And the idea here is you'll see at the bottom that all of these things together would cost $10. And we made up some of these numbers just for this exercise to give you all kind of a flavor of what we go through during the budget process. But we only have $5 to spend, and you'll see as I go through some of the slides later on that our revenues just don't grow fast enough to keep up with our expenditure needs. And so this is kind of the process and some of the decisions we have to work on every year, where we have to go through and say, well, how would we go about allocating these limited resources? So we want to give you all just kind of a little bit of a flavor of how that might go. So I'll be quiet for a couple minutes and let you take a look at it. If you don't mind writing down your choices, and we'll collect these back at the end and have any feedback you may have. So I'll be quiet for just a couple minutes.
I'd like to. Pen. I would like to just make note that this doesn't have actual budget numbers in it, so it's like a game.
It's similar to that. So the UNC School of Government, when they go out in the community and talk to folks about budgets, they use a similar approach to this. So you're absolutely right. It's not real budget numbers, and it's certainly not the full list of everything that's asked for. So yeah, it's just to give you all a little flavor of how things are.
I don't know about other members, but it is a little hard for me to go through this really fast and feel like I'm abreast with the process. But that's just me.
Yeah, I had a question. Is this just an exercise, or are you actually using this feedback in the budget planning process?
So we are taking these back up, and we're going to compile the results and share them with the city manager once we're through with this process. So yeah, we will take a look at it. I'm not, it may not be something that is a guiding resource during the budget process, but it's just one piece of information we have to help us, with prioritization.
But I just want to express that gives me some concern if these numbers are actually impacting the city budget and we're just seeing this here. I don't really think that's how the city should make decisions like this.
I agree.
Well, and we've gotten that feedback. Like I said, we've been out and done several of these in the last few weeks. We've gotten the feedback from some other folks too, and when we hear that, and certainly if you feel like you don't want to participate, that's fine as well. So.
I don't wish it well. How do these columns get moved? First one and the second. How do they get moved?
So I need a copy, maybe. Do you have the answers? Okay. So I believe the first column
This is how you really do it in the city.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a flavor for how we do it, yes. So what we do, I think the first column is City Council strategic priorities. I'm sorry?
The strategy list, how is that?
Yes. So I believe the first column, like I said, is City Council strategic priorities. And so each year's council goes through a prioritization process where they determine what are the main goals and the things that we as an organization need to focus on during the coming year. And so the statements on the left there come from their most recent strategic prioritization process. So those are the things that they are telling us that they're hearing from the community are important values and things that we need to be working on. So then what happens is staff will then take that information and go back and develop budget requests that hopefully allow City Council to and the community to address some of those needs. And so that's why we tried to align some of those requests with the strategic priorities, and then the dollars are the third or fourth column there. So
It's not the middle column, how's that?
hold on.
Funding proposal.
So those are examples of those departments when they're working on their budgets will put together proposals for funding new programs or new initiatives, and so they will put those proposals together during the budget process and submit them to us in the budget office, and we do a review of them, and then we pass them on to the city manager and the department directors, and that group works together as a team to decide which items we're going to include in the budget that we bring to City Council. Yes, ma'am.
I do understand as I look at this, these are budget allocations that the city, not all of the allocations, but some of the allocations that the city will be allocating funds for, correct?
Yes, those are some examples of things, yes.
I'm never going to hear that impresses upon me any type of minority inclusion, equity, or anything to benefit the minority communities of the city.
And again, we tried to bring forward just a few things as examples, and so that is definitely not the full list of everything that might be.
Relations Commission that we do with issues of equity and inclusion, so it might have been a little bit beneficial to kind of add something that might collectively pull our eyes from some of the issues that how this is an example of how some minorities are not included in budgets when we go talk to the communities.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if this is something that you use as far as data amongst other people who are minority or who seem to be part of the disenfranchised community that we have in Asheville.
And I don't know if this is specifically answering your question, but so this is a standard one. We've used this with all of the boards and commissions. We didn't tailor the exercise for each commission. We just used the same one for all the boards and commissions. And again, it really is just an example of trying to give you all a flavor for it. The fact that we have way more needs than we have money to meet those needs. And I think that's really the takeaway from all of this. Not so much what the individual items are on that sheet of paper, but just that we have a lot of needs in this city, and we just don't have enough money to pay for them all. And so, and as I go through the presentation here, I hope the next thing we get to is, so what is the process that we use, and how do we go about deciding what are the things that we're going to put forward to City Council as proposals. And so if you all want, we can certainly just move on past the exercise and go on to the agenda or through the rest of the slides.
But I think it's actually, sorry.
Well, I do want to stress, Tony, for one, thank you for being here and doing this. It's really appreciative just that you guys are bringing this to our attention. But as a new commission, we just want to make sure that we're in the realm of staying in our lane and fully understanding, the processes that's
Right.
at hand. Danielle?
So, one of the comments I could definitely say about this is that it's almost an issue of the transparency if there wasn't a thought process of even bringing a specific example that might be colored with, as Dolores and Tiffany both said, reflect some of the things that this commission would be would be really concerned with and be able to weigh in on. And so it just, I don't know exactly the right words, but it shows a lack of inclusion to not even feel that we deserve something that reflects more to what our, what our field of interest is as the Human Relations Commission. So it feels like it's a little bit problematic, so even if this is just like a mock example and, just how to show where the budget is, it's like it's reflecting maybe something that could be handled with a little bit more reverence for the concerns of the community and for the concerns of the commissions that want to weigh in properly and in a transparent way. So maybe it's even better for us not to answer the questions on this. I mean, I don't know how other members of the group feel, but it just
So
feels...
by show of hands, who would like, go ahead, I thought you were
I
raising your
think
hand.
we need to kind of clarify that this is not anything directed towards you, but it is illustrative, in my opinion, of where the direction and the attention needs to be on. Staff is carrying out directives set forward by the electeds. And so if we have any gripe or any complaint, then that needs to be directed towards the lawmaking body. And that would be our mayor and council. They're the ones who, appears to be council driven, and the staff looks for ways to make it possible. So I don't think, for example, I could say that increasing the pay for lower paid city workers does have an impact on persons of color by moving them to at least, 31,000 be in line with, living wage requirements. I mean, you can get out of it what you want to get out of it. I could conceptually say that there are minority areas who could need infrastructure investment or need extended transit. I mean,
Okay, can I just?
but I'm just saying,
Because I hear you.
I don't see anything about black people. Well, we can fit ourselves in here where we need to fit ourselves in. But I don't think that's staff's fault.
Oh, right, by no means.
Yeah.
I think what folks are saying is the generalized conception that usually when folks come in the rooms with minorities, oftentimes a lot of minorities do not understand the jargon that they see here. So sometimes it might be better just to be point blank and out front to understand, hey, this is what we see as far as, that part. And I do what you're saying. And I don't think anybody's going to blame city staff or
Right,
anything
yeah.
of that nature. I think it's more of a query as a lot of folks here in this board, or maybe some folks have said on other boards, just have to understand where the equity lens sometimes lies at. And I get what you're saying when it's hidden in some of these projects, the allocation, we are in there. But I think sometimes we get so hidden underneath the terms or the presentation of something that it becomes not as obvious as it should be. Does that make sense?
So for the sake of time, by show of hands, who would like to skip the exercise? Okay, if you can carry on with
Okay,
your presentation.
absolutely, yeah. And we appreciate all the feedback. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons we're out and wanting to meet with groups is, to get this kind of feedback, because we really are early in the budget process, and, folks are going to be developing their proposals over the next few months, so this is a very helpful discussion.
And just feedback, if we would have had this, some time to mull over this before the commission meeting, it wouldn't feel like we're rushed to give feedback.
Gotcha, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So, moving on, just to kind of talk a little bit about where the money comes from for our budget. So we have about $130 million general fund budget. And I'm going to be talking about general fund. And what that means is when we do accounting here at the city, we set things up on a fund basis. And so there's a general fund, which accounts for most of the city's major governmental programs that you all might think of, like police and fire, parks and recreation, public works, those kinds of things. We do have some other city operations like water, parking, transit, that are set up separately, and they're called enterprise funds. And so I'm going to focus really on the general fund budget today, because that's really the biggest piece of the overall budget. So these are the revenue sources, the main revenue sources for the city's general fund. And you can see there's not a whole lot of different pie slices there. And I'll talk about property tax last. But The two up in the top upper right-hand corner, sales taxes and utility taxes. Utility taxes are what you all see on your electricity bills, your natural gas bills. It's a state tax. They set the tax rate, and then they share part of that revenue with local governments. So that's about 28% of our budget between sales and utility taxes. And I guess the main point I'd want to make there are those rates are set by the state of North Carolina. So City Council has no opportunity to change those rates. If we wanted to raise additional revenue to use in our community, we can't raise the sales tax rate or the utility tax rate. Those are set by the state. So we have no control over those. The other category, which is about 20%, that's primarily fees. And so things like parks and recreation fees, development services fees, solid waste fees, and those fees really go primarily toward paying for the services themselves. And so they're not really available for kind of general activities or new things that we might want to do unless it's specifically in that area. So all that leads back to the property tax. And so really in the general fund, again, you can see it's the major revenue source of 52%. And so anytime we want to look at doing new stuff and we can't afford to do it within our existing revenue, really the only place City Council has the ability to raise additional revenue is through the property tax. And it's just very, very challenging, given the affordability issues here in Asheville, to ask folks to pay more through the property tax. And so generally we just have to rely on whatever tax growth is happening through new construction. And there's been a lot of new construction going on in the last few years in Asheville, but it still is not enough to really increase revenues enough year over year for us to be able to fund everything. And that goes back to kind of the lack of ability to fund everything that you all saw in the exercise. Please stop me if you have a question.
I've got a question. Is that the reason that we're seeing so many hotels being built? Is City Council wants to increase the property tax?
And do hotels pay property tax?
How does that work?
Yes, hotels do pay property tax. I would say, it's really more I would say the market for hotel rooms that's driving the construction here in terms of motels going up. It's not City Council's desire to raise more property taxes. That just happens to be what the development community is, where the money is to be made in the development community right now. Yes, ma'am.
Would you mind to use the microphone?
Also, with that question, my other question is also part of new building is being able to get incentives out of those builders, i.e. infrastructure incentives. So some of that money is also from new construction should be going towards infrastructure depending upon the deal that the City Council and whatever investors make during the said process, correct?
Yeah, I think we're limited, and Brad can probably speak to this way better than me, in terms of what we can ask developers to do as they're building new properties and new construction is going on. I think we're very limited in terms of us being able to go to them and say, hey, you need to give us X amount of money for sidewalks or whatever. So for most of the times, it's just the additional property tax revenues from those developments that come into the general fund. Any other questions on revenues? All right, so looking at that, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead a little bit. So one of the things we've been doing as we go out and do these presentations is really trying to stress to folks that we are a service-driven organization at the City of Asheville. And what that means is we employ a lot of people. We have about 1,300 employees here at the City of Asheville. And because of that, when you start looking at our budget, especially in the general fund, most of it goes toward people, toward paying salary and wages, toward paying benefits. And so that personnel line or personnel slice of the pie there on the left, 61% of the general fund budget is again people.
When you say people, do you mean salaries?
Yes, salaries and also benefits as well. So things like 401k, Social Security that the city pays into, that kinds of thing, healthcare, those kinds of things.
But the city gets sued. Where does that money come from?
Sorry, the city gets
The city
sued.
gets sued.
Do we ever get sued, Brad? So when we get sued, so there's a separate insurance fund that if there's a lawsuit brought against the city and that lawsuit results in us having to pay out some kind of settlement or something like that, that gets paid out of a separate pot of money. Now there is a portion, and this is kind of getting down in the weeds, but there is a portion of the general fund budget that goes to support those insurance programs, but they're really accounted for in a separate
It's not in
place.
that circle.
It's not, well, it's,
Where would it be in that circle?
part of it would be, we have a workers' comp program, and part of those costs are under personnel. We also have some money that goes into our liability program, property and liability insurance, and that's under operating. So, yes.
Does the capital percentage here, does that include the bond funds?
It does, and so what that 12% is it represents the debt payments that we're making on the bonds. It's not the actual $74 million in bonds themselves, but it's how much we are paying in debt in any given year on those bonds, along with any other debt that we have. Or we also have some what we call pay-as-you-go capital, where we just pay for it up front, things like street maintenance and sidewalk maintenance and those kinds of things, so and replacing of our vehicles. So that's 12%. And then the operating costs, the 27%, that's things like fuel for our vehicles, maintenance on our vehicles, materials and supplies for some of our crews that are out working on sidewalks and those kinds of things.
Tony, you mentioned, as you started on this slide, service work, or Asheville is a service something, I just didn't catch that.
Yeah, service, we say a service-driven organization. So we're
Service-driven, okay.
Yeah, so we're in the process, I think that speaks for itself. Okay, all right. So looking at that same set of expenditures through a little bit different lens. And so this is general fund expenditure. So about half of the budget goes toward public safety. And so that's police and fire. And again, we have about 1,300 overall city employees. About 600 of those are in the police and fire department. And so again, that really is the biggest chunk of our general fund budget. Public Works is about 10%. That's the folks who go out and work on our streets and sidewalks and who pick up our garbage. Parks and Recreation is 9%. Internal Services, that's kind of where I'm at. That's finance, HR, IT. And then the other is just a grouping of some of our smaller departments like development services and planning and those kinds of areas.
Has public safety increased that percent
In the last,
within the last 2 years?
the percentage over time has stayed about the same. It's gone up a little bit. We have invested a fair amount of dollars in both the police and fire department over the last 5 or 10 years, but overall those percentages have stayed relatively the same over time.
So all the percentages have stayed pretty.
They've stayed pretty close. Like I said, there's been a little bit of an uptick in what we've been spending in public safety, and I would say the last 5 to 10 years, but not a whole lot of change. And those numbers, especially when you go back, well, even this, and if you look at the other slide, our numbers are very similar. If you look around at other cities across the state or across the nation, our numbers are very similar to what you see in other places as well in terms of what we spend our budget on.
Thank you.
Okay. So how do decisions get made during the budget process? So I just want to start by showing you a quick overview of kind of the calendar for how we make decisions. And so I don't know how many of you all know, but our fiscal year runs from July 1 to June 30th. And so we have to have a new budget in place every year by July 1st by state statutes. And so we start the process well before then. In fact, we've already started the process for the budget that we're going to adopt next June. And that starts in the October timeframe where departments start working on their requests. So they're the things that you see on your sheet, they're working on those kind of requests right now. So what additional dollars might they ask for operating needs or capital needs? They're putting that information together right now. Once they do that, it comes into the budget office and we look at it and we look at the numbers and make sure everything looks in alignment, that if somebody entered $50,000, they didn't really mean to enter $500,000. And so we do that kind of analysis, what we call a technical analysis. And then we start working with the city manager and the department directors to pull together what I call a preliminary budget. And we take that and we start talking to city council in the February, March, April timeframe about the things that we are going to be bringing forward in the budget. And that's really to get their feedback early on to say, kind of, are we on the right track, or do we need to go back and regroup and look at some other things? And then it all culminates with the city manager bringing forward her proposed budget in May of every year. And by state statute, we have to do it by the end of May. And then usually there's about 4 weeks between when she brings her budget forward and City Council finally adopts it in June. And during that time, if City Council wants to make any changes to the budget that she has proposed, that they can do that. And then again, the budget's adopted in June and we start a new fiscal year in July.
I'm sorry, just so I can have a little bit of reference, how much money does it take
So the general fund budget, like I said, is $132 million. I think our total budget, once you add in water and stormwater and parking, I think is somewhere in the neighborhood of $190 million. So it's a lot of money. So.
Do you include grants and other outside funding sources into that, or is that amended as the year goes on?
It depends. There are some grants that are included in the adopted budgets. Like, so for example, we regularly get grants for our transit system, and so those are part of the adopted budget. But kind of like you're saying, there are grants opportunities that come up mid-year that we don't necessarily know about when we're doing the regular budget, and so we add those on. We can go back to City Council and do what's called a budget amendment middle of the year, and we can budget those grants. So that does happen. Yes.
There's talk that the budgeting process become more participatory. Where would people get their voice into that budget in the future versus today?
And you actually, my last slide I think gets to that. But I'll go ahead. I'll go ahead and give you a preview. So, like I said, one of the things we've been trying to do over the last few years is provide folks with more of an opportunity to be engaged, and that's part of what we're doing right now. As we move forward with the budget this year, we're looking at a couple things. One is the potential for some kind of pre-budget comment session for residents in January. We're still working through the logistics on that. And then we're also looking at some sessions where we go out into the community in February and March and talk to folks about the budget. And then kind of the last opportunity really comes, there's a public hearing that we have to hold by state statute in May, and that's held after the city manager presents her proposed budget, and so folks can come and comment then. So those are kind of the formal opportunities for it. But, you know, there's always informal opportunity. I mean, working through your staff liaison here for this committee. So yeah, there's many ways to get involved. Okay, all right. So this slide, I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but we're trying to give folks an idea of how much additional money we have every year available to do new things. And the one thing I would say about this slide, and what this is so if you look at that bar that says FY16-17, and it says 7.5%, that's how much revenues increased from the prior year. So you can see we had 7.5% growth, 8.9, 6.3. So that's good. That's really good. In fact, that's better. 3 out of those 4 years are better than we normally have. But part of the reason revenue growth has been better than expected the last few years is there were some fee increases the City Council adopted in FY16-17. There was, in the new year, you all may be aware that when Mission was sold to HCA, it went from a nonprofit to a private hospital. And so we now get property and sales tax revenue from them that we used to not get. And so that helped boost revenues in FY19-20. So really, I think the year that's kind of the normal year for us is that 18-19 year when revenues went up by 3%. And that's kind of what we see on a regular basis and what we are projecting into the future. And like I was saying earlier, that just makes it really hard for us to fund all the new stuff when you're only seeing revenues grow by about 3% every year. And these have been good economic times. As you all may know, we've been in an economic expansion for quite a while now, and if a recession were to start, then those numbers would definitely fall off. Okay, so as we're making decisions during the budget process, we always have to have a framework for how we go about that. And last year when Deborah Campbell came on board, she brought with her this idea of guiding principles for us to evaluate all the budget requests. And so last year when we were putting the budget together, these were our 3 guiding principles that we evaluated all the budget requests by. One was essential service delivery. So how did a request for new money impact a department's ability to continue delivering its core services? Did a proposal enhance customer value in some way? And then thirdly, how did it align with City Council's strategic goals? And this kind of goes back to, again, what was on the exercise in terms of, you know, City Council has a strategic plan, and we want to make sure that we try and align any new resources that we propose in the budget with that plan. Let me know if I'm starting to run close on time because I can fly through some of these last few slides. So just to kind of give you an idea, so like I said, essential service delivery was one of the main things we focused on last year. And so these were some of the things that we put into the budget that City Council approved that kind of met that objective. One of which, and I won't go through all of these, but We had some enhanced money for sidewalk and stormwater replacement. We put some money in the budget to replace some really old equipment in some fire stations. And we also put some money in the budget just to give folks, staff, a general pay raise as well. And then I'll mention the classic compensation study, which is looking at bringing folks up to the $31,200 a year mark. That's going on right now. In terms of enhancing customer value, we added some money in the water department so they could hire some additional staff to minimize the impact of service interruptions. We did a reorganization of staff in the U.S. Cellular Center that allowed for an improved visitor experience. And then another example of something we did was put some additional money into the sanitation area. In fact, we added a new position to address some complaints and service problems there. And then lastly, again, the kind of the third leg of that stool was aligning dollars with City Council's priorities. And so you can see, again, these are just some examples of City Council's strategic priorities and some of the specific steps that we took during the budget process to address some of those priorities. And again, I won't run through all of those, but we'll happy to share this presentation with you all. Council's number one priority last year was investment in transit services. And so I just want to take a moment just to kind of highlight this because, again, it was their highest priority, and we put about $1.2 million additional dollars into transit in the current fiscal year to begin implementing part of the phase one of the master plan for transit. And that involved increased frequency, realigning some routes, and some other customer and service improvements as well. And those are getting ready to launch. I think January of this year is when those improvements on the transit system are finally going to be out there and rolling. Okay, so again, and this is the slide I've already kind of touched upon, kind of looking ahead for other opportunities for public engagement as we move forward. We're looking at a potential, what we're calling a pre-budget public comment session in January where folks could come and give City Council input. We'll definitely be doing some kind of engagement in the February-March timeframe where we go back out in the community and talk to folks about the operating budget and our capital budget. And then finally, that public hearing in May, once the budget is presented, being able to come back and give folks or give the City Council impact or input on where we're headed with the budget. So I think that's my last slide. And again, I really appreciate you all having us out. I'd be happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Do you think that the people that you work with in your department operate from a mindset of abundance or a mindset of scarcity?
You mean in terms of how they view their available resources that they have to get their job done? I think...
Well, how they are prioritizing services for the community.
I think folks, and we had a retreat with our department directors a few weeks ago where we kind of talked to them about where we're headed with revenues. I think folks know that resources here are very, very limited on the operating side, even more so on the capital side. So I think folks know that if they're coming forward with requests, especially in this budget process we're going through this year, that there's not going to be a whole lot of new money available to do stuff. And so I think they certainly don't think there's an abundance of resources. So I hope they don't think there's a scarcity either. I hope they think there's enough that they can still meet the basic service needs of the residents here. But I think everyone realizes there's just not enough to get everything done that we need to get done. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Jones, did you have a question?
No, thank you. Very, very helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so just moving along, we're going to have an update from the city attorney and CPAC chair.
Hello again, everyone. And if I didn't say it before, thank you for having me out here. It's always a pleasure to come before this body because I don't get this much passion always from groups that I get to speak to, so it's nice to see. The reason I was asked to come here tonight, and I think it's important because since the formation of this particular body, there have been questions regarding your role and how you are to interact in a world that also has CPAC. We have CPAC's chair in here, and I think that they would I won't speak for them, but I think that they would probably have the same questions. What are we supposed to do? What are they supposed to do? How do we work together? So, in saying that, Nia and I had a very good meeting, I think just a couple months ago with your chair as well as the CPAC chair to begin talking about this. And in doing so, it became apparent that this was something that was worth your time to consider a more strategic and a more structured approach to actually outlining what are the duties of this body, what are the duties of that body, and what is the methods of interaction between the two. The goal of this would be so that there wouldn't be a question when you are making your priorities and setting your agendas about whether or not you are overlapping with another body. Secondarily, that you would have confidence that that wasn't happening with the other body as well. And when people come to you, you would know whether or not that's a matter best brought to this body or to another body. So I think those are some of the things you may be wrestling with. I don't presuppose that I know everything along this that you're dealing with. So I want to say that our goal from a staff perspective, and myself more specifically, is to help you develop the map that leads you to that point. All right, and this is what I do for cities. This is what I do for Asheville. What we believe is the best course of action for you going forward is to begin considering as a group, and I mean the two bodies, to think about what your governing documents say you were supposed to do, but now functionally, in the real world that you live in, what is it that's coming before you that would be most appropriate for you to handle, and what would be most appropriate for CPAC to handle. In doing so, it would be, I think, your goal to put together just some bullet points of priorities. This is where we live. This is where they live. And secondarily, how do we interact? Now, let me give you an example. It's not mine to determine. This is yours, and you get some freedom to figure this out. But in looking at your governing documents, it's very clear that the original intent of CPAC was very specifically tailored to deal with the relationship of the public and the police department. And that's really tailored much more to specific instances or a group of instances. Here's something that happened to me. Here is a course of action that we're seeing a lot. This group, HRCA, in your governing documents, you really don't even see the word police. Now, it says public safety at one point, but your mission is much broader. It's really based on human relations across the board with the city and all of the citizens and residents of this place that we live, and how to foster inclusion and equity and fairness amongst that group as a whole. Public safety is an element of that. But I find that oftentimes when you have another body that's tailored specifically to that, that may be the very best place for that to live. Now, you hear from that group what they're seeing in terms of trends. It may be something that you want to put in place that CPAC comes and presents to this body once a quarter, maybe once every couple of months, and says, these are the things we're seeing from a trend line perspective. This is what not just happened in every instance, but these are some of the big issues we're seeing that we think from a policy perspective, from a broader perspective, that this body may want to consider in terms of broad human relations across the city. And in doing that, also, when someone were to come to this body and say, I want to come and speak to you about something that happened to me, you would know if the structures were put into place, that particular thing is best to CPAC, okay? And CPAC would know if someone comes and talks about a broader policy of maybe how the police are performing outreach to communities. They may tell that needs to come to you. Yes, sir. I don't know that gatekeeper is the right word. I think that what you will find is that people don't know exactly where to come to. And I think both organizations need to be prepared to say, yes, that's us, or that's better in the other group, or vice versa. Yes?
Once we get this all laid out, is there any way that we might do an MOU rather than memorandum of understanding between the two groups legally?
We can do almost anything we want to do, and I think it's a very good idea. I think it is a very good idea to lay out that structure, because what you want is to define this. This can always be changed in the future, but you don't want to keep having to come back to this And when new members sit in your seats, you want that structure to be determined. So I put myself at your disposal to help actually formalize this agreement in whatever fashion you want after you've decided what those criteria truly are. And I think the most important thing now, which we'll have a chance to hear from CPAC as well, is for you to decide that if you want to take a vote on something, that you would be voting to have maybe your chairs work together to put together proposed, just a bullet point list. These are the things where we will focus our efforts. Without that, I think you are diminishing the efficiency of this and that body, because you are spreading yourselves very, very thin. And you may find yourselves overlapping in the things you're doing, and that's not going to help either side.
Has this ever been done in the city before?
This is sort of new. Now, I will tell you that the city of Asheville has a lot of boards and a lot of commissions. And it is very obvious to us that there's some overlap in some of these. And this particular body and CPAC are one that we recognize as maybe having the most potential impact, as well as the biggest potential problem for having that overlap right now. So this is the first area that we're trying to focus some serious attention to work this relationship out and let you and that body be the governors of how that actually looks in the end product. Now, you're governed by statutes, ordinances that establish you, but that's going to give you a certain amount of leeway. And I can help answer questions as you go through that process to make sure neither of you are going beyond your authority. But by creating those guardrails now, I think your relationship with the two bodies and with the citizens that come to talk to you is going to be improved. So we can structure it in any sort of agreement that you want. My suggestion would be if you vote to have your chairs work together to put together a framework, you can then vote to approve the framework at a next meeting or at a future meeting, and then I could help put together an official document legally binding the groups to this. Again, always subject to your ability to make changes later on, but that would be a process that we could help you finalize, and then the board of both parties could approve that together.
Because that was my biggest concern. I voted on it before I went to CPAC, and then after the fact, I'm thinking to myself, whoa, this is a big sea we're swimming here. So I do feel really comfortable about the MOU being able to be drawn up as quickly as possible so that our lines will get crossed off of that.
Yeah, I think that's something that we can do fairly quickly. It's something, once we have, from my office's standpoint, the information, and I think what that would look like, and we've had some discussions about that, some bullet points. You know, we're going to handle perhaps, from the CPAC's perspective, individual complaints, you know, about instances regarding police that we might have, or suggestions. This body would handle policy-driven, a broader scale of human relations issues, with public safety being a part of that and maybe only presented periodically so that you guys can know what's happening without having to get into the weeds of every single instance. So we can take those, just bullet point, a basic short outline, and start putting together an official document for you guys to look at. I know you had a question, I'm sorry.
What if we don't want to do any of that?
You're not required to do any of this. This is up to this body's determination. This is a suggestion that we brought forward after hearing a lot of questions.
I don't know where those questions came from.
Well, it's a good question.
No one has, and I'm all over this city, and I talk about the police department wherever I go.
Yeah.
And no one has told me that they are somehow under any illusion about what these two bodies do. I sense a setup.
Well, for myself, and
Not from
not to
you,
cut you off, yeah.
but the city is good for this.
I mean, as far as council's
They are
concerned.
good for this because anything regarding the police is hot, and they, for 20 years, have taken the see no evil, do no evil, speak no evil approach when it's come to Asheville Police. And the way that they have done it is farmed it out to committees and commissions. The city council wanted to get rid of CPAC.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't necessarily in opposition to that, but I don't want to hoist it on us because it will suck all the oxygen out of the room. And those meetings will delve into that spectacle I saw a year or so ago, and I don't want any part of that. And so I want to know, can we just not do anything? And if the council wants to make the changes, then let them do it.
To answer your question, absolutely yes. You're under no obligation to do this or anything else. But I think you make some really good points, and if I can address those. Let me say, first of all, from my perspective, just one of your good council members asked me a question just before this meeting and said, what do we do in these situations? And I think my answer was, that's what I want to come talk to you about. This is maybe the way to try to figure out who does what. You make another really good point in that if you're going to get brought into handling all of the police issues, all of the complaints that somebody might bring, it will, in my opinion, begin to suck all of your ability to look at, to analyze, and deal with other issues. And it's why I think you might want to consider doing this. The good news is if you do decide to do something, which you're under no obligation to, you might be able to tailor this in a way that avoids that problem, because this gives you a great deal more power to work with yourselves and this other body to figure it out.
And now, we choose what we want to delve into and what we want to issue recommendations on.
It's true, and that doesn't have to go away. What this would provide you...
If we don't want, and I warned this body at the beginning to stay away from public safety. We've done pretty good. We got snookered in that business with written consent, and I wasn't fooled by that. But I thought we had, our council liaison has gone to great lengths to say, oh, how much autonomy we have, and oh, how many opportunities we have to really effectuate change. We don't have to do anything public safety related if we don't want to.
That's absolutely true.
So I don't know why, and it's not you, I just sense something else here, and maybe that's just me, just because I've been here a very long time, and I just know that the city of Asheville can, the poster child say one thing and do another. And I'm just fearful that we have the ability now not to do it. Why do we have to go spend our chairwoman's time to go do something that she doesn't, we don't have to do anyway? I mean, it's not a diminishment, I appreciate it. But if you read the ordinance, we already have the ability to tell people who have issues relating to, and if it's that egregious, of citizens' interaction with the police officer, it definitely doesn't need to come here.
I don't disagree with anything you're saying in terms of there's nothing... Sorry. What is the staff want?
I said that they're going to get rid of CPAC. That's the first thing I heard. I heard it from a city council person. We're going to get rid of them. I think that's wrong, by the way. Okay? And then said we got to minimize the redundancy between us and them. But we said we weren't going to get into police work at one time. We said that. We're having a shift in our charter. We got to pick, we have one understanding about what we're going to do. And it's been shifting ever since. I didn't sign up to be involved in police work.
I think both of you are actually hitting on the really important point here. And let me start by saying what you're saying is there's nothing, first of all, absolutely wrong with a certain amount of skepticism on these things, and that's the eye that you should look at all of this. And let me reiterate, this is an option for you, not an obligation. You get to make the choice. You are empowered as the body over which...
Well, who are you speaking for? Because Keith at one time said we're going to get rid of the CPAC. Keith told me that.
Yeah, City Council has considered that in the past. There's currently no measure proposed to do that.
Let him speak.
What are you thinking?
Well, I can't speak for City Council.
Well, come here and tell us what to do. We're chartered by them, not you.
Yeah, and those are questions that I think would be posed to City Council. I can't speak for any individual or the council. Yeah, it's important to say that right now there are no initiatives in front of City Council to dissolve CPAC. And that's what I can say just based on my own personal knowledge.
You said you can't speak for City Council. That's what we're chartered by.
I cannot speak individually for City Council. I can only tell you what I know about what they've put on their agenda.
Okay, if I can interject.
Yeah.
So at this point, let's just take a pause, commission members. Let's hear Brad out. I'd like to call to order.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And let me just say, these are the questions that I think you guys need to ask yourselves as part of what I'm saying, because the goal is at this point, and to answer your original question, who's brought this up? This was brought to me by staff, by the chairs, to think about this as an option. So I'm not speaking for anybody other than your body and city staff as something that you may be interested in defining further and with some structure how you would coexist with this other body. You're not obligated to do that, and you can if you want. And if you do decide to do it, you have power over how you want to do it. What I've heard a couple people say is, you didn't sign up, nor do you think it's the best use of this body to be dealing with those police matters, especially down at that individual incident level. Right now, there may be confusion about that. This gives you the opportunity to define that specifically, so that this body, future iterations of this body, as well as anybody on CPAC now in the future, would know what their responsibility is and where it ends and where yours begins. Again, if you want to do that. Yes, sir.
Is the CPAC person here?
We have the chair, and I think he probably wants to come up and talk in just a minute as well.
Can you
Yes, ma'am.
speak to some of the consequences that could happen if we didn't work with CPAC?
So there's not a lot of legal consequence. Nobody's in danger of liability here. What I think is the issue is more of a functional efficiency one. The bottom line is when you read your ordinance and you read CPAC's ordinance, it might be difficult for somebody to understand, where do I go with my problem on this? Especially given that although you may not have signed up for a lot of these police issues, I'm at your meetings. I know that you end up being drawn into these things. And right now there's no structure in place specifically saying what goes where in those circumstances. And how do you know when to direct somebody to that committee? How do you know that they're going to direct certain things back to you that is better in your purview? Again, if this is something you wanted to consider, the questions you're asking me, sir, are the questions you should ask on the board. These are the things we think we should be doing. These are things we don't think we should be doing. And if we do something, that agreement can look anything like you want, and I can help you put it together.
Thank you. Nia has something to say, and again, I'm just going to ask commission members if we can honor who's up here and hold our questions until they open it up for questions. That would be greatly appreciated.
And just really quickly, I know there have been conversations of like, where did this come from? And like, we're going to dissolve CPAC and things of that nature. I know, but speaking with Councilman Young, our liaison, from having conversations with him, I know he's brought up wanting to work to having the HRCA be able to define the relationship with CPAC. So just answering in terms of like where that's come from, I know me personally, I've had conversations with Keith about trying to figure out what to do with these two bodies.
Thank you. If I can open it up to... Oh, yeah.
I'm here for any questions, and I appreciate the question. I'm happy to answer them. I don't think I have any more to add at this point. I would certainly tell you that I'll continue to be at your meetings, and I'll continually be at your disposal if there's something we can assist you with in this. But I believe the goal was, if there is a question about this, if there's something you want to do, we can help you lead through the process and put something in place if you want it.
Because you're 1,000% better than your predecessor.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
City attorney.
I'm happy to be here.
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm a newbie, so this may be information that's accessible, but can we look at the governing documents for CPAC? Like, are they
Actually see them?
available? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have them with me right now.
I mean,
I think
but
CPAC chairs may be able to
somewhere
share you,
accessible
but
that we can-
absolutely. I think if you're going to do something, that's where you should start. You should look at the
Right.
ordinance and look at the bylaws and see where there might be issues you want to address. Any other questions for me at this point? Okay, I'm still going to be here, but I'll turn it over. I think CPAC chair wants.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, commission members, for your questions, too.
Well, I think Brad spoke brilliantly about pretty much the whole process for everything. And first of all, I'm Blake Marcus. I'm the CPAC chair. Thank you all for having me here today. I was on the fly on the wall at your retreat, and I thought Nia did a fantastic job. She's a great asset for you guys. And that was a really good experience for me as well. I'm new as the chair. I was elected in September. So our committee lacked direction. I know there's a lot of history of CPAC being tumultuous, to put it nicely, from what I've heard. So I've been on for about 1.5 years now. So we finally have a stable board. I think good people who really want to do good work. The question I had, thinking about everything, is the direction we want to go. I really didn't know where that direction was. Councilman Young brought up the issue of, hey, HRCA is new. They have a lot of ordinance power that includes public safety. So the ordinance for CPAC, ours, as Brad said, is much more specific to the police department. So our main ordinance pretty much says our duties are is to serve as a liaison between the police and the community over concerns, to mediate problems and conflicts, as well as to serve as an advocate for programs, methods that improve the relationship between the police department and the city of Asheville. So that's kind of where we're at with everything. And again, speaking with Tiffany has been fantastic. Dolores at the meeting as well. I believe Davis was at a meeting as well. We had a really good meeting with Keith, Brad, Tiffany as well. And I think we came to the understanding that we should try to work together. And I understand your concerns. I totally get that. But I think at least proposed, I think Brad had a good idea of at least Tiffany and I, if you're okay with that, getting together and us brainstorming what those duties might look like. Look at the framework. If you don't like it, you want to throw it out, that's your right to do that. But I think based on how much resources you all have, we're a much smaller committee, a lot less resources. I think you guys would be a great avenue for us to kind of be the spear focusing on the police department. You don't have to worry about the police department if you don't want to. Again, that's, Michael said that. So if you want us to focus on all the police department, again, that's our ordinances specifically to the police department. That's pretty much all we can do. You guys have a lot more power, a lot more issues to deal with in this city. But again, I think race issues are a huge part of the police department. So again, it may not make sense for you all to totally dissolve your powers of overseeing the police department as well. So I just propose we kind of take it, at least try to meet together with Tiffany and I, if that's okay. More members are, however you want to do that. At least try to create some kind of small framework or a prototype, if you will, best way to describe it. And we can come together, look at it, and if you guys don't like it, you want to destroy it, amend it, whatever you want to do, that's fine. But that's what I propose, pretty much.
What's the problem between, what's broken between this group and your group? Is anything broken?
I don't think anything's broken. I just think that there's an issue of, uncertainty about how the two groups would operate in cohesion with each other. Yes.
One of the issues that someone from the community brought to me was that they had been to one of your meetings and heard that your board was requesting a stipend for your members, and they were concerned that if that board was receiving a stipend for your members and our board was doing the same type of work, how would that look as far as the community, and how would that look as far as what does that mean to people who serve on both boards?
I think, and Keith has been the spearhead of that. I think that's been tabled. I think now it has to go to all the committees, is my understanding. So it can't just be CPAC. It has to be every committee in the city of Asheville has to have an opportunity for a travel stipend. And that's what it really was, a travel stipend to see, if you take the bus to get to, to get to the meetings and things like that. But I believe it would have to be available to every council, every board and commission is my understanding. But again, that's kind of like, for bus passes and things like that, to be able to get to the meetings because they're after hours. That's my understanding. But again, I think it's been tabled. I need to talk to Keith about where it is now. But my understanding is it has to be offered to every board and commission, is my understanding. Yes, Michael.
How is this our problem? And I mean that because CPAC was in existence before we came along, so CPAC should have had their act together years ago. And I'll be honest, the city really didn't want to create this body. It might have been unanimous, but it was no easy feat. But I still am just not connecting on how is this our issue. Talk all you want to, but no one has yet crystallized in my mind how this is something, that this is urgent, that this is necessary, that this is timely, and that this will ultimately serve the folks that we really want to serve, which are people. Nothing in any of that. And I keep hearing Councilman Young say, and where is he? And he could, so that maybe he can give me some insight into, because I see him all the time, and it's never parted his lips to say anything about, we want to look at the relationship between the HRCA and CPAC, because he know what I would have told him. But nevertheless, I just don't know. Somebody's got to make it real clear to me, and maybe we need to table this and get some more feedback of how this is my issue, how this is our issue at all.
I was thinking about the same kind of thing that you were thinking about, and then I kind of tried to flip my brain a little bit and try to see, like, is there some place at CPAC that, that we could. One of the things I was thinking about that we might be able to add some type of leverage to is not policing itself, but dealing with the equity inclusion within the police department and hiring and community engagement and recruitment. that was one of the ways that I thought that maybe we could be, because we are a board that can make recommendations, that perhaps that we might be, that, I was trying to figure out ways that we might, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get that, but technically we can do that now.
Without CPAC, but I get that.
Yeah.
And so, I'm trying to think of ways there, and that's why I think to me, a MOU is so important to me.
I agree.
I don't know if everybody knows what an MOU is, but it's a memorandum of understanding. I think that's something that, but it is obvious that as a board of ourselves, that we need to have an understanding amongst ourselves about what our role. So I think that might be something, because we do have some type of,
Well, I guess an MOU could just reiterate where we are now. Well, clear. I mean, really, it could, because I don't see the need. Right now, how that ordinance is written for us is far more expansive, and as I read CPACs, I really don't see the need to tinker with any of it. And maybe we need to, as without anything formal, recommit and reacquaint ourselves with what we're supposed to be doing here. More so than CPAC, and CPAC, you need to go talk to your members. That's just where I am, and I don't know, it can be 8 to 1, and that's fine, but that's just where I am right now. I'm a very firm no, and I have not heard anything that convinces me otherwise.
Now, can I hear from members who hadn't had a chance to speak? Do you have anything you want to share, a comment, question?
Hi, thank you for being here.
Yeah, of course.
From my understanding, when I was hearing the CPAC, the collaboration between CPAC and HRCA, it was so that we can join together to help create policy to affect change in the police department in the city of Asheville. So within, regards to everything that's happening, how and what would that look like? So there would be a trend of complaints that would be seen by CPAC. CPAC would bring that to us. We would collaborate on policy to prevent that from ever happening again, submit it to City Council. City Council can decide to accept the policy or not, and would that be a level of relationship or collaboration would be a really beneficial thing to the city?
I think that'd be great, to be honest with you. And again, that's why I think the memorandum of understanding is so important, so we can kind of brainstorm those kind of issues. I think that's a great point.
How many people are on?
I'm sorry, Isaiah.
Sorry. It just feels like we already know what our purposes are, and they're already clear. I feel like we just need to read our bylaws and just keep knowing what we're doing. If people haven't read their bylaws, then they don't know what they're doing. So maybe just hand people what they should already know.
Sure.
And then we don't need to have this conversation again.
Sure.
Because they'll have already read it.
Which I understand, but I think our point is, with the overlapping efficiency, the overlapping responsibilities that we have, we can focus on the police department for y'all, is what you all want to do. Because again, public safety is a big part of what you do, and reading the bylaws, you have other things you have to do as well. But if you don't want to deal with public safety, with the police department, then maybe we can do that for y'all. And we can just focus on that, as our ordinance says, and bring back issues to y'all for policy concerns.
Public safety includes more than just police department.
It does, absolutely, 100%. But we can be part of it.
One at a time.
You're absolutely correct. But we just focus on the police department, but we can fulfill that role for y'all.
And one of the things too that came up was, just as you brought up earlier, the written consent. So my hopes of this collaboration was the police department specifics would be carried out through CPAC. So when that written consent came our way, we could have sent that to CPAC, and then they just came with an update and brought that information to us. So that's just in terms of my thinking, not that CPAC is rolling over and giving us all of their workload or tasks, nor are they're taking away what we already have and what we've already done. And also, we've been having this conversation since September. Since even before. So I know a lot of people have a lot of passionate thinking, but if we can just keep it specifically to what we're talking about, which is a collaboration, that would be super helpful. And I know Danielle.
So Keith Young did advocate for this, I think, at even this last meeting that we have the minutes from, right?
Yes.
So I feel like there's something that's inspiring him to believe that there's something greater of good can come from us working together.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to hear from you what would enhance CPAC from us to function in a better way. Is there something specifically that you feel like we could work together? Are there things, other than deciding on whether we should work in public safety or not, are there things that you feel like we can accentuate or clarify or edify for CPAC in terms of how they do their job? And I think also another question I have is, does CPAC feel like on their own they wouldn't be able to carry out the things that are required of them without our input?
I understand. I don't think we don't feel we're able to carry it all out. Again, with the high turnover that we had on our board, we're finally stable now. But I think a partnership with you all would give us kind of more power to help the community, is how I kind of overall say it. It is best way to say it. But I think it's a very good point. But again, specifically, I'm not 100% sure on how that would look. But again, that would be going brainstorming with you all and how that will look in the future. But again, I think with how much resource your group has and how passionate you all are, I think it'd be great if we could work together. And I think just in generally it'd be better for us. It would enhance us to have your input and everything as well.
Okay, go ahead, Chris.
How many people do you have on your board?
We have 9 on our board.
How many of those people actively come to meetings on a regular basis?
So I was a little disappointed the last meeting, to be honest with you. We only had 5. We barely had the quorum. So we did vote to work with y'all. We barely had the quorum. But normally, we're usually having about 7 to 9 members there. Last meeting, I was kind of disappointed, to be honest with y'all. But we did have quorum, just barely. But we did.
I think that's where so you kind of answered some of my questions. So I think some of what is going on with our board right now is because of the history of CPAC.
Understandable.
And that was a good question that Chris has asked, because I've been in meetings, not saying that your board has been this, but there have been often times where CPAC cannot get quorum, and it's been during times that they needed it.
Yes.
And so a lot of things got not dealt with in ways that it should have been dealt with.
Understandable.
We have not had that problem but once in our 2 years of being in service at this time. I think that's an issue. I think that the way that CPAC has historically dealt with community, as far as their issues have gone, has been a sore spot in the heads of the community. And I think also the fact that your board is very much has had to be reorganized altogether. I think your whole board, except for 3 people, are pretty much new.
They are. I believe so.
And so I think that kind of holds some weight. And so I think as a board, and I'm not trying to speak for everybody, but I'm just getting the feels, because I've kind of had the feels of this myself, so I'm being quite honest and transparent. And like I said, I didn't get it until I was at that meeting, until after the fact, and I said, whoa, this is a lot. So I think for myself, I would feel very much more comfortable if we are to indeed to move forward, is to be able to get some type of strategic working plan together to where our issues, y'all's issues, there's certain times when we might be able to have conversations about things, but I don't want our board to lose the legitimacy that it has to be able to make recommendations to council or to any other city entity because we have been absorbed by something else that doesn't have quite the capacity that we have, and it can convolute the discussions that we're having with other people. I don't know if that makes sense. I also want to be able to not have instances where, especially when we're doing situations where media might be coming at us, and I believe this is something that we need to be able to be concise about, that city council and the mayor did not, but the fact that, as a board, I think a lot of us have been approached by newspapers, and I have many times, and they might put that I'm the vice chair of our board, but I never speak on behalf of our board because I would never do that without the permission of our board. So I don't think that we should, I think that's some of the things that might need to be put into working conditions, as we move forward. I think this is something that we need to look at perhaps in another meeting where we can sit down and allocate time for our board. I advise your board to do the same.
I agree.
So that the 2 of you can come back and tell us like
Brainstorm together.
what's the next steps
I think
and
that's
how we're
great.
gonna move forward to where if we still do feel uncomfortable, we can, vote to do whatever we need to either go forward or rescind.
How, what is your sense of urgency with this collaboration?
Yeah, I'd like to start soon, to be honest with y'all, but I want you all to feel as comfortable as possible with everything. Again, this is new to me, this entire world of, city government. I think you guys will be a great resource for me. I'm learning a lot already from you all, just going to the retreat, going to your last 2 meetings. So I'm trying to make CPAC actually do something, is what it comes down to. We're looking for the direction. I think we have a stable board finally. I know CPAC has a very troubled history here, but I think we're past that in my experience. The board is really amped to get something going, but we're looking for that direction. I think if we can coordinate with you all and decide, exactly how we're going to work together, I think that will give us the direction we need, and we can start putting forth, our best foot forward. Yes, Davis.
First of all, I respect that you're here. I respect the CPAC and its history.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a lot of misunderstanding. There was some subtle messages that this is the most powerful group in the city. That's not true. Okay, that we're better than other groups. Keeping said that. We got fairly good attendance, but we have not delivered one policy to the city council the whole time we've been here. Not one. What's up? I'm wrong telling you.
We have written consent issue.
Not one.
That wasn't your word.
That's why that.
So I don't put yourself down is what you're talking.
I understand.
I asked you what was broken. You didn't give me a good answer.
Yeah.
Nothing is broken. I'm trying to fix it.
Yeah. Again,
Okay,
you're right.
Another
Yeah.
thing, this should be good manners. Anything comes for any group in the city, the first thing you should ask, who should be working with? We didn't do that. We got ourselves some stuff we should not have been involved. We should not have been involved in signing this thing. That was not our business. That should have gone directly to you. And people came here and talked about police brutality. That's not our thing. We should send them right to you.
Yeah, I think that's what we should work
It's
on.
not an inclusion problem. You send them to us.
Yes.
That's just good management. The other thing is that we're all managed by the same group of leaders here. If you got bad attendance, there's a way to deal with that. And we got bad attendance here, and ours is not that great, to be honest with you. We got a way to deal with that. People don't show up. They're supposed to be moving on to the committee. If they're managed well, we're managed by the same people that manage the city. So don't put yourself down. If you think it's worth holding on to, I'm begging you to hold on to it.
That's why I'm here.
Don't contaminate it.
Thank you, Davidson. I appreciate that. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Do you not have a staff liaison? I know you got a council liaison.
We do have some, not as much as Nia is involved, to be honest with you. We do have the EA for the chief of police is on the board, kind of like a liaison, as well as another staff member for on the police department is also liaison for us, but not as in depth as involved as y'all have.
Well, because y'all's work is far more narrow. But my thing is, okay, you got a new board, and a new chairperson, you haven't been here very long. Work on that, because I'm just not of the opinion we need to come try to problem any other group. You're gonna succeed or fail by yourself.
Fair point. Fair
The
point.
same goes for this group.
Yes, I.
Did written consent, when that happened over the summer, did that go through you at all? Or
It
why?
really did not.
Why did it not?
That I could not tell you, to be honest with you. I do not know. And that's a good question.
Not to interrupt, but I think it's important. I feel like you guys are highlighting some of the very reasons that you may, as a body, decide that you want to do something. You've given a couple examples of written consent came through you. Why? You all agree that it probably shouldn't have, but there's nothing in place in your ordinance telling you that kind of a thing specifically. Now, you can go and you can argue about it and try to decide, but there's nothing right now specifying those kind of things.
We don't do good with rules. We don't do good with rules. Don't tell us we need more rules. I don't want to hear it.
This may be less about rules as well, and I think maybe a better way to look at this.
People don't pay attention to that stuff.
Well,
They got rules that say if you don't show up, you should be on the
Call to order. I'd like to call to order.
I think it's a good point because perhaps the way to think of this is less about the rules and more about mission defining.
It's good manners. It's not our business. It's his business.
That's true, and the problem that you get into with manners is some people see manners as different than others. And I think what you might end up with is, what if you have a situation where an issue like written consent comes up, and someone in CPAC says, well, that's not supposed to be ours, and you say it's not supposed to be ours, Right now, there's nothing in your ordinance that would tell you what to do.
I'm telling you, man, people don't read that stuff.
So for the sake of time, we have 5 minutes left to our meeting. I want to bring it back. Blake, if you want to just close out.
Just thank you all for having me. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for coming.
Again, just thank you all. Appreciate it, okay?
We'll definitely follow up. Okay, so I'd like to propose that we, on letter C, the update from staff liaison, I felt like you kind of cleared that, unless you have something specific.
One, I'm working on the minutes to get y'all from the retreat. Two, it is my recommendation that y'all not have a December meeting. Y'all can vote on that. Just wanted to put that out there. And regardless of what y'all choose, I'm here to support y'all. So, just know that I'm here. So, whatever work that needs to be done, I'll make it happen. I'll find a space and stuff. So, here for y'all, stuff like that. And the reason that, yes, all boards and commissions have a staff liaison, but I think I'm the only person in which, y'all are written into my job description, which is why I'm as hands-on as I am, because it's, literally my job to hang out with y'all, so. Yeah.
We thought you just liked us.
On unfinished business, so we're here to look at a vote, but it sounds like we are not in that place right now. So could we table this for our next meeting?
I mean, look.
Let's keep it brief.
Or get off the pot. You can go vote now or leave it alone. To move ahead with some kind of collaboration or not. Let's not drag this into the new year.
So that's my case. Is there anyone else who would like to add?
Yeah, I'm interested to see what you and Blake kind of team up and figure out, what your bullet pointed list might be. I'm interested to see what that kind of strategic planning would look like.
That would require us to vote though, right? So how about I make a motion to vote.
Second? Second.
To
To vote on the next steps. If you want to he's making a motion to vote on the next step, if you would like.
And I will say, to make it specific, if you just do a vote that, the chairs need a vote to, create bullet points from it for MOU, so it's, specific.
Yeah, my suggestion would be that a motion be made to vote to direct the chair to work with CPAC's chair to come up with a proposed list of items that you could then consider, do you want to then vote to take that to the next step or not?
Sure. Can I just so move that?
Yes, you can.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Nay.
Any opposed?
No.
Nay.
Okay. We might need to show of hands. Yeah, can you raise your hands, please?
All nays, please raise your hands.
I'm counting.
Nay.
All nays, raise your hands. So,
It's still carries.
yeah,
Still carries.
thank you. All right, so vote approved. Yes. Let's get another vote in for the December meeting.
I motion. Yeah, I voted just to do what Neil said. Because last year we did this, we voted to have a meeting, and we almost didn't have a census. We had 3 people in 2 classes. So I'm just saying, we have good intentions until we something come up. So I'm just saying, we got lucky this time around with Thanksgiving next week, but Christmas is a little bit different. I'm gonna tell you right now. Next week is on my birthday, so probably in January. So I don't want to see them for 2. So
Okay, so
we need to vote to have a meeting, to not have a meeting in December. Anyone who's in favor of not having a meeting in December, vote now.
yes, yes.
Aye. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All
Any
in-
opposed?
Any opposed?
All right.
We ain't having a
Motion
meeting
approved.
already.
Well, before we close out, I do want to open it up for any public comment. If you could step to the,
And because you have a new position, could you introduce yourself to our board, please, sir?
My name is Rob Thomas. I am the Racial Justice Coalition Community Liaison.
welcome. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. My question concerning, listening to him and everybody else speak would be directed towards you, I guess. Okay, if they do this MOU and is it contractually binding as pertaining to an issue that's not within that MOU that may be of urgency and may take both committees, leverage or whatever you want to call it to get it passed? Are they legally binded to not act on it?
So that's a really good question. And so I'm a lawyer. We like to write about everything, but you can't. You can't absolutely, under any circumstances, figure out everything in every circumstance that could come up. So I would suggest that if you're going to do this, that you focus on three things. If you're going to enter into some kind of an MOU to say that this is our mission, this is our focus areas, and this will be your focus areas, those would be the first two things I would suggest that you consider. The third thing that you should consider is collaboration. Or do nothing. Exactly. All of that's on the table for you, and you can decide we don't want to collaborate, or you could say if we do collaborate, this is what we would do. And I would suggest that in situations like you brought up, you would say, if there's a question raised, here's how we're going to solve it. Okay, this is going to be the person, or this will be the group that will make a determination. Maybe you decide that in those circumstances, it's your chairs to get together and decide we're going to divert this to this committee or that committee, and or not. It's truly open to you to figure this out. I'm here to help you to structure that the way you decide, if you decide you want to do anything at all. But it's those kind of things that's why you have agreements, to try to figure out in advance how this would work. And there's always still going to be some things you didn't contemplate, but you try to get as close as you can to say, here's what we do in those other situations.
And this is not just between chairs. This whole commission is a team, so we'll all be collaborating. I'm just a spokesperson with the chairs. So, yeah. Ivan?
Yeah, would this collaboration between both chairs be occurring during a meeting time, or is this independent?
And again, all of these questions we should bring up because nothing is set in stone. We have no plan. So it's like a tabula rasa. Can I have a motion? Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.